How are you, everybody?
Good.
The cap bank ordinance that you are is up for vote tonight is a standard practice for other municipalities available in the state of New Jersey. And what it simply does is this. Every year, the state government figures out what our cost of living adjustment is, also known as a COLA. This year, they anticipated at 1.5%. So they're assuming gasoline goes up by 1.5%, electricity, and the reality is it doesn't. So by passage of this ordinance, which is an introduction tonight, and passage before the adoption of our budget, whatever budget we choose, it allows us to exceed the 1.5%, go up to the 3.5%, and it also establishes a cap bank. And that's really the more important part of what you're voting on tonight. If in the event that we have a spike in expenditures in a given year in the next 2 years, and this cap bank is available for us this year to use for the succeeding 2 years, that is what you need to, that's what you're doing tonight. We don't need it this year. We're okay this year. It's what we don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 years that you're taking action on tonight. This is not a, some people say, well, where's the money? It's a cap bank. It sounds like there should be a pool of money somewhere. It's not. It is simply a calculation. When we look at a budget, there's a portion of it that's inside of cap and a portion of it that's outside. And an example of the portion that's outside is your debt service, 911 expenditures, interlocal agreements. Things that are inside cap are your utility bills, your health care bills, salary and wage and OE. So, as I said, that's a standard practice. There's no anything that's different from any other municipality that's probably at this moment in their CFO's life of asking, what the heck is that? So that's pretty much what it is. Does anybody have any questions?
I think that you just cleared it up for me, but that was.
Instead of an ordinance, could that be a resolution?
Only counties are allowed to pass that by resolution. This is a cap bank ordinance, so municipalities have to go through the process of a first reading, advertisement, and adoption.
Now, does the percentage change every year?
Actually, it does. So the maximum you can go is 3.5%, and that's what this achieves. It gives us the 1.5% that the state gives us, and adds 2% on top of that. In a year, next year, they might say that it's 2%, their COLA adjustment, and our ordinance would read 1.5% uptick. The end result is you're going up to 3.5% with this ordinance. So there's a portion that the state gives you and the portion that your action adds on to that.
Is this an ordinance that will come in every year at budget time?
Correct. It has to be introduced prior to the introduction of the budget and adopted prior to the adoption of the budget. And a copy of this will get sent down to the state upon introduction of whatever budget you choose to see.
And this is only good for 1 year?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Have a motion and a second, please.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second. And we have any questions? Roll call, Janine?
Mr. Campion?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Mr. Borback?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. A resolution number 2015-84 approving the municipal budget. Well, I have it right here. We have two in front of us. I call them dueling budgets.
Mr. Mayor, are the original two out of play? I mean, we're not considering the original budget that was first introduced?
Well, we actually had four.
Four, right? Are we down? These are
Well,
all
that's
the
what we're here to
options.
decide that.
Okay, all right.
But we're at plan C and plan D, yeah.
Well,
We'll hear from our finance chair first.
okay, well, I can try to tell you the differences between these two budgets. I can also give you a little history about what the differences
No, I see, I know, I can
A
see
and
the
B,
differences,
okay.
yeah.
I mean, we started a process where we had a public meeting where we had a workshop, and we went through the budget. At the end of that budget meeting, we had a budget, an increase of about 2 cents to our tax rate. After that meeting, we came back together again thinking we could probably do better than that. And after lengthy discussion, we saved money in 2 different areas. I think we saved about $30,000, $25,000 to $30,000, just cutting the $1,000 here, $1,000 there. So it was like across the budget. We went through it line by line. And then another big chunk was $55,000 that we reallocated to the sewer, the utilities, the water utilities. So we said basically that the allocation of salaries, the amount that people work for our sewers and utilities was not allocated as directly as it should, and we said $55,000 is going to be allocated. So the end result of that is essentially budget number 1 that we're looking at, which is essentially like a 1.3% increase, a 1.3 cent increase. The button that says my name on it, yes.
It has a C in it, it's been C.
Yeah. The only difference between that and the budget that we came up with at the end of that public hearing was that there was $48,000 that was allocated for capital improvement. $24,000 of that allocation was for public works. We reallocated that to be part of the, to put in a new fire whistle. And so we had talked in both of those meetings about, sort of saving for rainy days and creating a capital fund for future projects, and we found out that the $48,000 that we had designated for that really needed to be spent on current projects. So $24,000 was allocated for a chief's vehicle and $24,000 for the fire vessel. Go ahead.
Can I ask some questions?
Go ahead.
All right.
I'm sorry, Ken.
Oh, how does that work?
I'd like to ask Jerry.
Oh, go ahead.
Jerry, do we have to have a motion in a second before we do all this?
Well, what you're, eventually, when you actually decide what you're doing, you're gonna then introduce it, and then you're gonna have a hearing later on, and then hopefully pass it, but you can't have, I don't know that until you decide what you're actually gonna go with, you can have a motion.
Yeah, I think we want to make sure.
Am I allowed to ask
budget
questions
motion.
before we do the motion second or not?
I think that's the only way you're gonna get there. unless
Okay.
Today you have a
All
different.
right.
I'm good with that.
So,
We're allowed to ask questions.
my
In this
concern
case,
is,
you have to.
most of, I guess at least recently and in the past, most of what we talk about in terms of the big dollars and big projects is in public works. And so now I just heard that we shifted money out of public works. I'm also looking at a document that I think Jay prepared in terms of, it just gives you an overview, I think the last page. Looks like this. It gives us the age of all our vehicles and all of our other materials, things that we use in public works. I'm looking at dump trucks that are 20 years, pickup trucks that are 23 years, another pickup truck's 27 years. So that's a trailer.
No.
Needs to put new wheels on it. But I'm thinking, if we have all of these trucks and trailers, and the number one thing that residents ask for revolves around public works in one way or another, whether it's filling potholes or fixing ponding water or drains and things, how can we then decide to move money out of public works if that seems to be one of the most important areas and one of the most important services that towns can provide? So I'm asking, is there any consideration to moving the $24,000 or putting $24,000 back into public works so that we can continue to do more projects? I mean, has anyone driven around and seen the curb situation? Curbs are 20 feet a foot, am I correct? 20 feet a foot to fix a curb, right? I mean, $20 linear foot. And, I mean, has anyone been up Lake Avenue recently? There's no curbs left. And the curbs around town are all cracking. So can we put some money back into public works so that we can continue to move forward with the maintenance that we've been talking about, fire hydrants, curbs, all these other things? Is there a way to put, what is that, a quarter of a penny back into public works?
Yeah, $115,000 or so is about a penny, so $24,000.
Be less than a quarter penny. I mean, the number one things that people ask for all revolve around public works, and we're taking money out of public works. And we have a laundry list of things that are getting older in public works. By not funding public works, I think we're guaranteeing, or underfunding public works, you are guaranteeing at some point you're going to need to do another bond, and you're paying for things out of bonds that you shouldn't be paying out of bonds. That's all. I'm just going to raise that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You brought up a good thing about the curbs. Jay, how do we fund the curbs?
Well, and if you'll notice, since Councilman Taken referenced it, I provided you with a capital inventory, and specifically have indicated that street and road drainage We have not provided any sort of a detailed analysis because frankly, we haven't yet counted up what the square footage or square yardage of our paved roadways are, nor have we calculated the existing curbs that we have. But we have traditionally here funded our road and curb projects through the use of state grants, supplementing that with, most recently, in the case of the 2011 bond ordinance, included $300,000 in unidentified road and drainage improvements. So we have been drawing that fund down for the last few years.
We're also paying interest on a bond that if we would have put money away, we may have been able to bond less. Let's just acknowledge that. Instead of paying interest on a bond to put curb in.
That's right.
I think one of the reasons our tax rate's relatively low is because we had traditionally paid as you go. Just compare your tax rate to wall or something, you know?
Any other question for Tom?
Can I get, and let me just explain the difference between the budget that has my name on it and the one that has Sarah's name on it. Essentially, what the second budget is the same, it's the same as the first one. The big difference is that there's, I mentioned that $55,000 that we reallocated to the water and sewer utility. This one includes another $155,000 that's allocated to that, or another $150,000 or so. So the end result is that we would be reallocating $200,000 to the water and sewer utility. And my point, and now I've stated facts, now I'm going to move into editorial. Why I support the one that has my name on it, not the second one. Two reasons. One, I think that if there really is $200,000 in surplus that can be spent on other things in the water and sewer utility, then we should consider lowering the water and sewer utility rates and not rating from that to pay for the general budget. From a taxpayer's point of view, I would rather actually get the tax break from my property taxes than have my water rate paid for part of my my municipal budget, basically. I think that there's been past precedent that we've done that in the past. If we do it this time, we're always going to have to spend that $200,000 because otherwise next year, if we want to take that back out, all things being equal, we're already adding 2 cents to our budget, and then with any raise, it's going to be a 3 or a 4 or 5% increase. So I think it'll draw down that water and sewer utility surplus fairly quick if we do that. And the other point is that I think past councils put the rate at where it was at for 2 reasons. One, to protect against future rate increases, and 2, seeing that some of the infrastructure probably needed to be replaced that were big ticket items, it puts the money in there to be spent for future projects. So to be spending it to what I think is sort of a trick to make the budget look like we're not raising it is just making it so that we save money today so that we have a bigger increase down the road.
And that wasn't the intent when they created that fund. The intent was not to rate it.
Yeah, so anyway, I think that, yeah, it was originally designated for a specific purpose, 2 purposes, like I said, to protect against future water rate increases and to, if needed, to fund future programs. But anyway, those are the 2 budgets. I'll give everybody their chance to say their opinion since I've added my own. But I would like to, once everybody has their say, I'm going to try to introduce the first one. The one that only takes, that has about a 1.3% or 1.1 cent, 1 3/10 cent of an increase. I'll say it right.
And how's that factor out to, say, the average taxpayer? Was it $90, $100? Jim, you know?
I believe you're referring to the calculations we had done previously. That's approximately correct. I believe that at one point we had proposed the 2-cent increase would be $90 for the average property owner. So 1 1/3 is somewhat less than that.
What, about $45? Is that what it is?
About $50 or something.
Okay, that's about $1 a month.
I mean, I love the idea
That's
of
what we're
zero
talking
tax
about here.
increase, but I don't
For two
personally want
Starbucks,
to
we
do
can
it.
put money away for the future and have a fiscally responsible budget. Thank you.
So I'm done. Anybody else wants to talk? Feel free.
Anyone else have anything to say about these two budgets? Councilman King?
Yeah, the reason that I propose this budget is because I've done a lot of talking to the residents in town. And one thing we do have to remember is this town consists of a large amount of senior citizens. And the senior citizens really don't want to be paying for something that they may not even see the results of. And they don't really have a problem with bonding for equipment. The fact that some of this equipment is old, it's always been old, and we've been trying to replace it over the period of time and fitting it into the budget. Now, my reasoning for taking the $48,000 and putting it into the fire company is that, number one, we have committed ourselves to assisting the fire company with $24,000 towards a new chief's car. The other issue that has been in town, and is a very, very serious issue, is the fire whistle. And this has been going on for years. It hasn't just started now, it's been going on since the day the fire whistles were put up. And to have the amount of money to simply go out and put in a new type of whistle and only need one whistle, and the cost of it being $24,000, and putting that money again into the fire company, I think is well worth it, and it's going to certainly satisfy the public and make a lot of people very, very happy. As far as a zero budget goal goes, I don't see a necessity to be increasing the budget just for the general purpose of putting away a fund. If we're going to do something like that, and we're going to do it over a period of time, I think we need to do a lot more planning. I think we need to streamline things. I think we need to look at the overall picture. People don't want their taxes to go up. They already got hit last week with the article in the newspaper that their school taxes are going up 2%. We don't even know what the percentage of the county increase is going to be. And people have already asked me if I could find that out. I can't find it out because they haven't finalized it. So now we're going to come along and we're going to hit them with another increase in taxes. And I just don't think it's a fair thing to do. I think what we need to do is we need to look at everything more stringently, maybe cut in some other areas. Maybe we need to look at revising our ordinances so that we get more revenue. We have antiquated ordinances, both at the court level and here, as far as what Joe deals with on a zoning and a coding situation. There's a lot of work here that we can do to increase our revenue. And I just don't think that this is the time that we need to increase the budget.
I mean, just to point out, the fire whistle is in both budgets. The increases in the budget that has my name on it are not so much increases, it's just a shifting of funds. I'm perfectly, if we think that we're charging too much for our water rate, I am perfectly happy revisiting our rate structure and talking about lowering those rates. I'm not happy with shifting the burden of not raising the taxes so that we can pay for it with our water and sewer utility. We've been down that road in the past, and I think it leads to both, it's not transparent as to where the money is coming from, and I think it puts us in trouble when we have to raise water rates again to make up for our taxes.
Well, Tom, I don't say I disagree with you on the water. I think we do have to relook at the water, because the water issue is an issue. And there are a lot of people that, for one thing, they don't like the fact that they're only getting 8,000 gallons now. They would prefer to go back to 10. But on the other hand, I would say that the majority of the people in town don't want to see their taxes go up. And as far as shifting the money and moving things around, that's what things are there for. Is it right? Is it wrong? There's pros and cons on the whole thing. But I just don't feel that this is the time that we should raise taxes. And I gotta be honest with you, and I don't wanna put you on the spot, but you're quoted in the newspaper as saying that one of the things that you do not wanna do is raise taxes, and now you're gonna raise taxes.
You never want to raise taxes, but sometimes you have to.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
you're,
costs go up, you have to figure out where the money comes from, and at the end of the day, I think you do what's best,
That's right.
fiscally responsible for the town, and taking it from the water rate just to make it look like we're not raising the taxes. I think that if there really is $200,000 that we're taking from the water and sewer utility, that is there, that we can put into this budget, it shouldn't be there. I mean, I'm perfectly happy to revisit that and try to get that money back to our residences. But by taking it out of there now, that wasn't what its purpose was. I don't
Where are you seeing
think,
200,000?
we, in our initial budget meeting, we shifted $55,000 in salary and wages from, and then this budget has another $150,000 shifted from the water and sewer utility to salaries and wages, so the total was somewhere over 200,000.
which is something that we're allowed to do. because
I'm not saying we're not allowed to do it, I just don't think it's the right
Because it's going for
decision.
salaries and wages, it's just a reallocation of
Well,
their
I think
salaries
we also
and
had the
wages.
discussion about bringing more repairs back in-house as far as replacing the hydrants that we pay out and things like that that are going to demand labor, so I'm not necessarily saying, I mean, I'm seeing about 170,000 based on the numbers here, so we can round up or we can round down to 150, but either way, if we're going to net a savings by doing more repairs to the utility ourselves instead of paying it out, you might see a wash on that.
Whose budget will allow us to fill more potholes? No, I'm being
It's
serious.
still the same.
I don't think actually either one makes a difference.
I was just-
I mean, we would really come right down to it, both budgets sort of have the same, are spending the same amount of money essentially, it's just a question of, I mean, in my mind, where the additional money to even out the budget is
Right, so
coming
we can
from.
get, if we take it from the water utility, we're charging too much for
Yeah, the
water.
argument there, I
And
think,
we'll just
is that
finish.
the money's already been raised by taxation, or it's already been raised by the water rates, but
Right,
my
but-
difficulty with it is, I mean, certainly as a taxpayer, sorry, is
Well, I
that,
was gonna go there, yeah.
I would rather
Get the
that
tax
the
rate
rate
off the
really
federal.
be properly reflected in the tax rate, so that I can get my tax benefit, like,
From the,
from it,
same,
as
yeah.
opposed, I don't get any refund from the government because I
Correct.
For
pay
water,
at
yeah, you
water
don't get
rates.
any refund
I
for
do
water.
get some because I pay it through,
Correct.
Exactly.
so, I mean, that's all.
But if we change
We're actually paying more.
if we change the water rates, don't we have to totally revisit that whole thing? I mean, we couldn't adjust that now for this budget. We have to totally revisit that whole concept.
So we could.
But just
And-
because
So
it
we
doesn't
can
look
vote.
good, doesn't mean it's not the right way to go.
I think it has to be
We
done,
could
but
vote,
if,
well, to solve that problem, we could vote for Plan C and then go back and cut the water, we correct the water rates.
Or you can go for Plan D and correct the water rates.
But if you do vote for Plan D, you're relying on the water rates to pay for.
We're just shifting an allocation, Thomas.
Yeah, but you don't
It's
get a
just a
tax write-off
semantics.
under your plan
That's right.
as a taxpayer.
Yeah, you don't get the tax write-off on your taxes.
And then
Actually
if we
costing
do shift the
taxpayers
rates,
more.
and when we get them to be the right rates, we've got $170,000 that we've got to make up in the main budget, and that's going to be a 1.5 cent increase on top of whatever we have to increase in future years. It's going to be there.
Right, and then these expenses aren't going away, so.
Mr. Barrett, if I was asked you, it was always my philosophy, the municipal budget on the surplus. I was always under the assumption that is the people's money. And when we make out this budget, why don't we give them that money back? I know there's a reason for it, but why don't we?
I'll tell you from my perspective, being the finance guy, running a few budgets in my time, it is a balance sheet reference, meaning it's known on the balance sheet as fund balance. In the real world, it would be stockholders' equity. Sometimes they refer to it as surplus. The connotation of surplus that, hey, it's extra money. Let's give it back to the taxpayers. But surplus, fund balance, stockholders' equity is the strength of your municipality. And when that is depleted, given back, you have a tax rate in an election year, says, oh, let's give back 5 cents, if that was even possible. It becomes an EKG, tax rates go up, tax rates go down. I've been in worked in municipalities that have done that, against my advice. I'm a slow and steady wins the race kind of guy. When the rating agencies look at your fund balance, it's one of the first things they look at. If you deplete it, it's not there, you have a problem. And the fact that our bonds that we have outstanding are through an improvement authority that also refers to our audits and our financial disclosures as the health of the entire financing. I'm not saying you put that at jeopardy, but certainly in the future years, when you do have a road collapse or something catastrophic, or your vehicles get wiped out with a tidal wave, whatever you want a catastrophic event, you're going to need to go out and bond. And whether it's a preference not to, pay as you go, whatever the reality is, when you need a garbage truck or something, you don't have the money, we need to go and bond. That's why there's bond laws out there. You put a 5% down payment, you can finance the rest. That's when this is going to hurt you, as far as the idea of giving away your surplus. You want to have a strong surplus, both in the utility fund and your general fund, and you're in good stead of this.
And that's my thing I'm trying to come to grips with. What is a strong surplus for us, Glencoites, in our municipal budget?
Any type of, as we've spoken in the past, it's a local decision. So it's not nothing the state's going to promulgate to say that X percent equals a strong budget. It has a lot of different factors. But generally, the rule of thumb is somewhere around that 4% mark, 4 to 5% is a strong surplus. And certainly you're at that point in the utility a little bit higher. But the utility also has its own problems inside of it. If you have infrastructure failures, those are not cheap, type of endeavors. So that gives us, if it's self-liquidating, so that means the revenues are exceeding the expenditures, we don't have to put down that 5% down payment like we do in the general capital fund. So it's a balancing act of trying to keep your healthy surplus in those funds, but also look forward to the 5-year plan as to what your capital needs are and what your operating costs are going to grow to. So there's no magic bullet I could offer to you tonight as to say, as far as giving back surplus.
So if I was to say, Mr. Mayor, could I take 90,000 out of our municipal budget and put it towards our anticipated surplus? Would you agree with that?
And you say $90,000.
Well, now we're at 290, I guess?
You're at 290, and you're at the point right now where you're at the maximum, or close to the maximum value of what your cash surplus is, the portion that is cash in the bank. When we look at surplus fund balance, we also look at non-cash assets, such as taxes receivable, which are fully reserved, but also what's owed to us from the state of New Jersey, and also our deferred charge on the books from Hurricane Sandy, which is $84,000. So we're at that sweet spot right now, as presented in either of these plans. The utilization of surplus is the same in the current fund. In the utility fund, to balance things out, we used $100,000 in Plan D's and David budget. That's the only material change. That was covered in the memo I sent to everybody.
Yeah.
John, what was the Sandy payment you said? What was that as a one-time final thing? How much?
$84,000.
So that's something we won't have next year.
Right, but that also factors into your current surplus balance. That's considered a non-cash asset, as it's known as a deferred charge, because you're raising it in future years' taxation. In this case, we brought in insurance proceeds and created a reserve on our balance sheet so that we would amass that in order to pay this obligation off this year. So next year, the $28,000 that you normally would have had, which would have been 1/5 of that $140,000 special emergency, won't be in the budget. So you're already at a $28,000 savings in next year's budget.
Well, that, and with the other items that are on there for the fire department, that's another 50. So there are some things that won't translate to next year as a direct correlation that if we do this now while we adjust the rates, we're not necessarily getting hit with the total amount next year as though it's really there. These are one-time expenses that are going to disappear next year. Granted, they could be replaced by other endeavors, however.
Correct, Councilman. Any type of capital outlay, which is what's covered under the fire assets at this point, the apparatus and equipment, that can be a yearly. That could be next year's plan to fill potholes, next year's plan to put away for equipment.
The bond that we have open, do you know what rate that's at?
It's in the audit document. It's a variable rate bond, so every year has a different maturity value and interest rate. I believe it's in the 4% mark.
Is there anything to be done to get that lower?
Now, we've actually taken a look at that, and because it's pulled up, if it was a locally placed bond, so if Borough Spring Lake Heights would have issued that bond individually, we could have possibly refinanced that to a lower interest rate. The local finance board, not to bore you, looks for a present value interest savings of over 3%. So they take the interest costs that you're going to accrue, that you're going to pay over the life of the bond, and they say in a circumstance where you're refinancing lower interest rates, does that equal a greater than amount of present value savings of 3%? And at that point, it's a gimme. You can just go out and refinance that. And that there's also expenses associated with that as well.
So we don't necessarily have that ability now.
You do not have that ability right now, the way you've issued that debt through the pooled loan.
Hypothetically, could
Good
we
question.
prepay that bond off,
It's a good question.
like a mortgage?
It's called, in essence,
I'm just asking hypothetically.
Sure, the essence is that since it's issued by the other, you can't refund it or prepay it. There's some caveats in the bond issuance that says that the investors are guaranteed a certain income stream over a period of
So we're
time.
stuck with it, okay.
Now, there's a thing called reserve for bond defeasance, which means that if we had extra money that we want to put towards a reserve on the capital fund balance sheet, then we could anticipate that reserve. It's a little bit of complicated math, but at this point, I don't think you have the flexibility to be
I
able
didn't
to.
think so either, but
Yeah.
just hypothetical.
Yeah, there's a way of doing it. It's just, it's like making sausage. You don't want to know how you get there, we can get there if you need to. That's an analogy.
So we should have done a different type of a bond, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I was here when that thing was already in the final stages of closing, so it was a good idea at the time. I presume based on the folks that were in the finance office that gave you their advice. I can't really speak to that as a thing of history. If we were to move forward, I would personally, I would see what our interest rate market would bear, what our individual rating would be for the fiscal health of this borough, and then see and compare and contrast if issuing a bond separately here as opposed to getting into a pooled loan situation like you did previously. The reality is you got AAA rating because that was the bonus. No municipality that I know about has AAA rating. That's usually reserved for the counties. So the counties would pay a lower interest rate for issuing under AAA rating as opposed to, say, a AA rating, which we would probably be equivalent to at this point under S&P rating.
Morgan?
Jay, we had asked this before, and you had mentioned it again tonight about paying for this road project, and we had to put money up, and then we had money left over that was put towards that. Where did that money come from?
The bond ordinance that, and the bond issuance that John just referenced was part of the pooled loan. We refer to it as bond ordinance 2011-04. That bond ordinance, which amounted to about $1.5 million, included a laundry list of items for such things as garbage trucks, front end loader in public works, police equipment in the form of license plate readers, the speed signs. As I know everyone had their own little addition. That included $300,000 of road and drainage improvements that were not designated as specific locations. Again, as in the case of John, I was not here when that was formulated, but it was my understanding from speaking with people that were here that there was some general agreement that there needed to be money put aside for road improvements without debating at that point which were the specific roads.
Is there any money besides that $300,000 that wasn't spent from that bond?
Yes.
What's the total value of that?
I'd have to look it up. We've been spending
Do
it
you know
slowly.
ballpark? I mean, we're talking in the tens of thousands?
Probably in the $100,000 range.
Part of what gets me, and I'm going to throw this out there on why I'm absolutely against a tax increase until we go through and fix some problems, is I see $400,000 we borrowed from a line of credit 6 years ago, we're paying interest on, so we can take the money, put it in a shoebox, and throw it in the pillow. I think that's grossly irresponsible. We're paying money, paying interest on money with taxpayer money that we didn't need at the time, clearly, we didn't spend it until 6 years later. And we're stuck with it now for the next 20 some odd years, right? But how long is it, or you said it was 20 years, so
They were
15 years later maybe?
bonds, they're down to
So-
probably-
But I just have a real hard time increasing taxes for anything knowing there's $400,000 there. So if there's another $100,000 left that's not used, why can't the whistle come out of that? Why can't the Chiefs car come out of that? Why does it need to be a line item for a tax increase? So when you're talking about it shocking us next year with the change, I see these things out there. I'm opposed to a tax increase because I'm not 100% behind this, and unless I am, I'm not voting for it.
Chris, but you also mentioned, when we were talking about including a capital fund in the budget, that you were very adamant about not wanting to have a future council raid a fund that you put together for a specific purpose. And that's exactly what we're doing by taking money out of the water and sewer utility. And that's the, I mean, if there's another way that can't do a zero increase budget, please show me.
Well, that's what I'm asking you, that instead of doing that, can we use that bond money to fund those capital items so that we don't have to do that? Is that our solution for all this?
Okay, well, yeah, that's a great question.
If that money's there and we're paying interest on it, let's use it for the things we have to. Let's not touch the utility. Let's leave it at zero budget, and everybody up here is happy.
I do that.
Councilman, as you know, we've completed the audit and for 2014 in email correspondence with the auditor, Bob Swisher. We've asked him to identify those capital ordinances that have available funding. My memory is escaping me at this moment.
It's 11 o'clock at night. I'm not holding you to know.
In the $100,000 that the administrator has quoted, I believe that's the available funding if we issue more debt. But there's a portion of the capital funding that's funded through the bonds that are outstanding, and the unfunded portions, the analysis that we've been given, which we will propose to the governing body to reallocate those assets to other capital expenditures, will have to get done at some point in the future. There may be a number somewhere between 50 and 100, to my memory, that we could reallocate towards those pieces of equipment or put it into capital surplus, and then allocate that as we had in the past in the utility fund for direct expenditures without having to issue bonds or bans. So
I certainly wouldn't want to issue new bonds, but if we have that money there that's ours that we're paying interest on, we're talking about raising taxes, we're going back and forth up here. When we have money that's already there, we're going to take more from tax money to pay for money that the tax is already paying for money that we have that we're not spending on things we need. My head is hurting right now.
So is mine. But the reality is, for the I would call it immaterial amount of money that's there, as soon as we sort things out, the auditors have a resolution to cancel or reappropriate that, that could also be another bite at the apple for those capital wants and wishes outside of this whole budget process that we have in front of us. Okay, it's not going to change anything, but it would basically, if it's money ready for a street or a piece of equipment, through a resolution, we could reappropriate that.
How soon do you think you're gonna have this information from Swisher?
We already have it we already have received a draft copy of his numbers. So if you, upon direction from the mayor governing body, finance chair, want us to bring forward something to that. But that also says that, we also have to make a determination with your public works manager as well to see if we do need that money, because it might be already earmarked for some piece of equipment or some other improvement. So there's a little bit more. I couldn't knee-jerk this over to you and say, here you go, make the resolution happen, because out of that money that's available, as I said, might be earmarked for other things that we're still purchasing. The capital improvement, the capital fund in both the sewer and the general capital are perpetual. They last a long time. You pass a capital budget, it might take a few years to get the roads paved or other drainage improvements or things of that nature. So that's why we have that multi-year capital program in place.
And what about all those ordinances going back to like 2005 or 2003, whatever they were, that were never used? Can we put that money back into the fund?
It is specific to that. If it's funded, yes. If it's unfunded, meaning that it's what's called authorized but not issued, it means that you as a governing body have said, hey, go out and issue debt, but the municipality hasn't issued that debt. So that gets canceled, and it kind of comes off the appropriation side as well.
But if I recall, Jay, didn't you and I sit down and go over that list, and wasn't there about $48,000 there?
There were, and that was part of what I referenced earlier, as John has mentioned. Some of these are funded authorizations and some are unfunded authorizations. And I'll defer to the finance guy to sort out that difference.
I showed up back on the show. At least for the camera.
I thought that it was 48,000. When you and I looked at it, I thought it was 48,000 that was funded.
And that would be as of the financials that we provided for the annual financial statements. So that would be snapshot as of 12/31/14. Those balances may have been depleted from there. So that was where my figure was, around 50,000. So that's 48 That's in the ballpark of what's funded. And not to bore you with funding unfunding, but as I said, it's an immaterial amount of money, but at a later date could be reappropriated. And we can probably get that to you in the next month or so, and make that a council item for you. If the administration, Public Works, and everybody else is bringing free money.
But we have plenty of time going forward from tonight to make changes, alterations, even though we introduce, correct?
Yes, just to recap the process, upon introduction of the budget, I'll be hand delivering this down to the representatives of the state. I'll be filing the levy cap workbook and other documents that support this budget. The budget will be then reviewed, and also in addition to the annual financial statement and the audit, that we're blessed to have had that done earlier this year with the new accounting firm that did a great job. And at that point, they'll give us notes as to what needs to be changed, if there's any amendments necessary, any requested information. And that usually comes probably hours before the public hearing and adoption. They're really backlogged at the state, so that's why I have a few gray hairs in my head trying to get those comments clear, because we need their clearance to adopt the budget. So in the event that we have clearance from the state, and in the event that between introduction and amendment and adoption, you as a governing body want to make changes, and they're in accordance with the state law of budgeting, we can do that through a budget amendment. And we would hold a public hearing on the given date. You would then read the amendment, you would then vote on the amendment, and then open the public to basically the amended budget to be adopted. And at that point, if it doesn't change appropriations within some statutory levels, that we would have to re-advertise the budget, at that night you could adopt the budget. Now, that being said, we are a little bit delayed in this process, and so it's multiple factors. The main concern I have for the governing body is that we get this budget adopted in a timely fashion so we can get our tax bills on the street by the July 15th deadline. We have 25 days to give notice to the residents as to their August 1st tax bill. So that is very important. So there's printing time, there's certification from the county, so even if we get back to June 30th, I'd like to get everything wrapped up and be done. Because there'd be an extra expense that we need to amend the budget for the estimated tax bills, which would have to be sent out. So it'd be actually 2 more mailings, additional mailings to the residents, which is going to be postage and printing expenses. So if we can avoid that, we're good.
Okay.
Any more questions?
So we have a decision. Pass the resolution, either Plan C or Plan D, and they can be amended up until what?
Prior to adoption of the budget.
Well, I would like to make a motion to introduce Plan C.
I'll second that.
So let's vote.
Any questions? Janine, roll call.
Mr. Campion?
No.
Mrs. King?
No.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
No.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Mr. Borbeck?
It's up to you, Mayor, yes.
Mayor, we require your vote.
I have that feeling.
Beats me. We just wanted to involve tonight.
Well, before I do vote, I would like to explain to Mr. O'Brien. As I was speaking about the municipal surplus, I always thought it was the people's money, you should give it back to them. Even though I'm wrong, I feel in some way, it's the people's money, utility, it's their money as well. So I feel we are giving it back to them somewhat, by not having a tax rate. So I vote no. Pardon?
Motion did not pass. The introduction didn't pass.
Okay, I'm going to propose that we put forth Budget D. And I make a motion to do such.
Second.
Any questions on Plan D? Roll call, please.
Mr. Campion?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
I'd just like to say, I think it's just, I don't know, I think that we would have served the town better financially by not taking this money out of the utility surplus, but I have a feeling that the general council up here is not going to agree with me, but you know, now you have me on record saying that I want to raise taxes, so that's cool. Anyway, no.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Timken?
No.
Mr. Borbeck?
No.
Mayor? You require your vote.
Yes.
Well, at least we got one.
Motion to introduction passes.
Yeah, we're not totally done yet.
Still got more.
Wrap it up.
More, Butch.
Like 5 more.
All right, we do have other resolutions, and in addition, I would like to thank these guys, my colleagues. You do work hard on this, and believe me, I appreciate it. And John, I want to thank you, well, even though we're not finished yet, okay, but I want to thank you and Jay for your hard work.
Here, here.
We have a resolution R 2015-85 approving the use of the community center. Need a motion and a second.
Make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any questions? Roll call,
Mr.
Ginny?
Campion?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Mr. Borbeck?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Resolution R 2015-86, authorizing a refund of overpaid and canceled taxes.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Do you have any questions? Roll call, Janine?
Mr. Campion?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Mr. Borbeck?
Yes.
Passes.
Thank you. Resolution R 2015-87, supporting the Click It or Ticket program.
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Any questions? Roll call, Janine?
Mr. Campion?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Mr. Borbeck?
Yes.
Passes.
Thank you. Resolution R 2015-88, authorizing adjustment of a water sewer account.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any questions? Roll call, Janine?
Mr. Campion?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Mr. Borbeck?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Resolution R 2015-88, approving the appointment of temporary seasonal employee of DPW. Need a motion and a second.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Do we have any questions? Roll call, Janine?
Mr. Campion?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Mr. Borbeck?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Resolution R 2015-90, establishing the recreation fees.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Second.
Do you have any questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Campion? Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Mr. Borbeck? Motion passes.
Thank you. Resolution R 2015-91, approving membership to the fire company.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any questions? Roll call.
Mr. Campion?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Mr. Borbeck?
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution R 2015-92, approving payment on claims for May 8th, 2015 bill list.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any questions? Roll call.
Mr. Campion?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Mr. Borbeck?
Yes.
Thank you. At this point in the meeting, we have the public comment where you may step forward and speak on any item that's on your mind.
You want to talk about Nadine Court?
No, I don't. This might be a little levity to the evening.
Did you find your house yet?
Kathleen Crippen, 564 Atlantic Avenue. This is sort of a public safety issue. On the lift station at the end of 6th Avenue, and Joe, you may know, I know Joe's, I guess, left. Is it possible to get a motion sensor light mounted on that lift station facing the little parking lot for Black Creek Park? And I'll tell you why, and I know that Councilwoman King and the mayor were there for the cleanup. That little parking lot has become the local lover's lane. And I'm getting really tired of picking up the condom wrappers, and I sure as hell am not gonna pick up the used contents. And our public works guys shouldn't have to pick them up, and they're all over the place. And it was interesting that the fellow from Mercer Avenue spoke about the tap house, because I wonder if people are going down to the end of 6th Avenue afterwards. So maybe if we could get a light on the lift station, it would not be so romantic back there, and maybe the officers, after they get through cruising the tap house, could go down to the end of 6th Avenue. And in seriousness, and you know, I'm glad people are practicing safe sex, but you know, don't litter, that becomes an environmental hazard. So, but my real concern though is we have had a lot of drug issues back there. I think there was some dealing going on at one time. We've had a lot of drinking issues. The summer is coming on. I can hear all this stuff from my bedroom window, so, and some of my neighbors have said, why are there cars down there at night? So if we could do something to start patrolling and cleaning that up and maybe get it a little better lit, I think we would all appreciate it.
If you don't mind me commenting, I would file that under TMI.
I feel bad, like, the public, telling the public works guys, get down and clean it up, because it's,
No,
and
no,
it's starting to get really bad. I was down there, so, and of course, then the problem is, rubber product washes in the storm drain, winds up in the ocean, and then we get Clean Ocean Action coming in complaining that, we're poisoning the ocean. So, just in an effort to keep everybody happy, public safety and environment, we need to do something back there. So, thank you.
Now she's got you recorded.
Dave will be right
Good evening,
over
this
there.
is my hour now. Very effectively. So I want to get some exact numbers for the council, but because we switched computer systems recently, it's a difficult process for me to get exact numbers. But I want to speak with reference to the gentleman from Mercer Avenue's issues, and then also Ms. Griffin's issues regarding what's happening down in her end of the town. So my 40 hours are spent on the midnight shift, and to the best of my recollection, we had 8 to 10 snow emergencies this past winter, during which time the reverse 911s were sent out, Facebook notices were sent out, public notices are sent in many different capacities. And I can tell you that when I work with Sergeant Goodell, who's the only sergeant that I work with, we take that very seriously, and we immediately start. One takes the north side of town and one takes the south side of town. And what we do is we go street to street, and every car that we either encounter that is parked on the street, we'll run the license plate, try to find an owner, and try to locate him, have him move the car. When we can't do that, we'll summons the car. And although I don't have an exact number because of computer issues, I think we wrote more than 100 snow enforcement summons this year, and we ticketed towed at least 10 cars. So, and I personally typically do the south end, which we would consider Mercer Avenue. And I can tell you that I have issued several summonses in this gentleman's block, the 600 block, personally, and I've towed at least one car across the street from his house personally. Now, I think what happens is, taking the south side and starting from Brighton working south, we'll address them, and if we can get them moved or towed, we'll do that, and then we go street by street by street. That's not to say that cars aren't going to fill in those spots. So yes, that could be a concern, but it's certainly not for lack of enforcement or lack of us being out there doing that. Just I do. And in reference to the noise complaints, during my 40-hour shifts on the midnight shift, during which bar break typically takes place, I have never been called there for a noise complaint during this year, 2015, and frankly, 2014, I can't recall on our side of the shift, which I should say is Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe typically less busy days than the typical Friday, Saturday drink nights. Those particular nights, we don't have a problem there. Our shift does not, the midnight shift does not have a problem there. So I would ask the residents to be our second set of eyes out there, so when they see something, they call. To come to a council meeting is nice, but frankly, we need to know when it's happening so we can address it when it's happening. And the gentleman spoke about a greater presence in other towns. Well, other towns utilize Class 1 officers and Class 2 officers, and frankly, it's my understanding that places he mentioned, the Parker House, the Parker House sets aside a budget amount to pay for these supplemental law enforcement to stand there to be that presence. So I imagine, should the council decide that's how they want to handle it, that the chief will arrange something, and we'll certainly have officers standing out there. But That shouldn't impact the 2 officers who are on patrol for the 6 other alcohol serving businesses in town. And frankly, this goes also for the issues that are potentially happening near Ms. Crippen's residence, down by the lift station. So my 40-hour midnight shifts, I have yet to be called down here for that. And as part of our midnight routine, we do business checks, including the DPW station. So we do go down there, and certainly if we saw something unusual, this is what we do. We would investigate it and determine if there's anything that we as a law enforcement need to do. But I can tell you that I have not, and Sergeant Cannell has, or at least our midnight shift, the Sunday through Wednesday folks haven't had to deal with this yet. And I implore the residents to call us if they see something unusual. They are the 5,000 eyes that we are not. So.
In your travels, where would you gauge the noise coming from the tap house on its busy time of the night? Is it comparative to other similar locations?
You know, I can't recall a time in the past year where I've been called to the tap house for a noise complaint.
Okay.
Now,
I never catches your attention.
In fairness to the police, they can only respond to stuff.
I didn't know if in
you
travels
drive
you would say,
by, you
I
can't-
once had a traffic stop, I got out and it was obnoxiously loud or something. I was just curious.
He's correct. When I was on, code enforcement officer,
Yeah.
people would call me the next day, said, noise was bad. I said, call the police.
Yeah.
There's a misconception with noise, that it's a code enforcement issue, and at that time, it's usually 24 hours or 48 hours later.
It's too late.
It's too late.
We appreciate it.
Sure.
Thanks.
Just one other point. So it sounded like to the gentleman that the noise and activity is primarily happening during the summertime. Not typically, I drive with my windows down in the patrol car
Yes.
all the way down. And there have been occasions where when I have gone down Mercer and heard noise, I'll pull off. We have a very good relationship with the management there, who we know each other by first name. He's a resident of the town himself, the manager. And I go in there and say, hey, you gotta turn the noise down or close the doors. Because typically what this is because the doors remain propped open
Right.
for a circulation of air or whatever, and the noise emanates. But again, in the past year, I can't recall on our side of the shift ever having a noise complaint, a fight call there, an active fight call there. And P.S., I don't drink there or eat there, so this doesn't serve me any good or no good to give them good or bad publicity. But from a law enforcement perspective, it is not quite the animal house in which it seemed that the gentleman was perhaps suggesting.
That's why I had asked you the question I did, because I figured in your travels with windows open or just being on the highway or in the general area, if it was something excessive at a regular frequency, you would have known.
Absolutely. And when I personally heard it, I think the proactive approach of saying close the doors, turn it down, whatever the case is, I would rather the residents not have to call dispatch, because then it could appear as if
Sure.
we're being lackadaisical in the enforcement. So, thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else have anything you'd like to say? Any other motion to close the public comment section?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
If we don't have any further discussion, I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Any discussion? Marathon.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
In the morning, sir.
Yep. Good meeting.